Thank you, Patta sir. Good evening to all. For today's discussion, I have selected a rare and interesting case of obstructive jaundice for presentation. Straight away going to the case. This is a gentleman of 47 years of age who presented with recent onset of pain abdomen and jaundice of 1 month duration. The pain was predominantly in the upper abdomen epigastric region, radiating to back, and it was more of a dull, constant ache. And jaundice was also present for 1 month. He said 1 month back he was apparently all right. That was the history. This jaundice was associated with intractable pruritus, causing insomnia, and his stools were clay colored, associated with some weight loss and anorexia also. There is no history of any fever or chills suggesting cholangitis, no history of any GI bleed, and he was a known diabetic for the last 5 years on medications. So that's the history of the patient. No family history of cancer. On examination, he had a very good performance status. He was deeply icteric, and scratch marks are present all over the body. Abdomen wise, liver was palpable, gallbladder was not palpable, no other organomegaly, no other organ or mass was palpable, and there is no evidence of free fluid in the abdomen. There is no ascites. So blood investigations were done, and CBC and RFT were essentially normal. That's the LFT for you. Total bilirubin was around 20 milligrams with a predominant direct component. SGOT and SGPT were 174 and 221. Alkaline phosphatase grossly elevated 413. Total protein was 7.1 and albumin was 3.7. CA99 was grossly elevated. The value was 921. Ultrasound was, he came with an ultrasound report which said that IHBR is dilated in both the lobes of the liver. The common hepatic duct and proximal bile duct were dilated. Distal CBD could not be visualized. Gallbladder was not distended, appearing normal only. The main pancreatic duct was dilated, and ultrasound also picked up a mass lesion in the head of the pancreas because they could not characterize the what kind of mass it was. So that's the initial information for you. How to proceed further? Next, what will be the next investigation?
CECT, pancreatic protocol.
So you want to go for a CECT pancreatic protocol? Okay.
Endo ultrasound.
Endoscopic ultrasound, madam.
Yeah.
Not pancreatic, not a CT scan.
So ultrasound, and then based on that, depending on the type of lesion, then for staging, I would go for a CCT.
Okay. Ubal?
CT with the pancreatic protocol.
Now, I always wanted to know whether when you have an obstructive jaundice patient, where will you do a endoscopy? Is it before CT scan or after CT scan? Ubal?
After CT scan.
No, is it because we had a discussion in our even the class also, because most of the times in the examination, what the candidates do is they talk about pancreatic protocol CT and they completely miss the endoscopic mentioning about endoscopy. So I think endoscopy can be done at any time, even before nothing. Any specific reason why do you want to do endoscopy after CT scan?
So here we are looking at a lesion. It's possibly most likely malignancy.
Okay.
So the endoscopy is mainly not only diagnostic because we are planning for some therapeutic also. So okay. Main idea of doing having a CT scan, better anatomy will be a CT scan, so that we can assess what is our next plan. So if it is surgically inoperable or something which is required further, we can do both the procedures together. I mean, what I mean was endoscopy plus ERCP.
So that's the idea for doing a CT. Okay.
Yeah. Basically, it is not a routine endoscopy, not a unplanned endoscopy. Suppose if the same patient, if there is we are looking at a periambulatory lesion, his ultrasound didn't pick up anything. In that case, maybe I would have go for a side viewscopy and mainly look at the ampulla for a diagnosis. But
Okay.
here we have a lesion at the pancreatic head lesion. So before endoscopy, I want to have a better imaging.
So you are telling if ultrasound was suggestive of a periampullary growth, then you can go for an endoscopy first. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
The distal CBD was not seen, no? It is,
Yes, madam.
yeah, so it's surprising.
Yeah.
So which means the block is slightly higher, so your endoscopy is unlikely to pick up anything. Now, so you are not going to look for a diagnostic endoscopy. If you need an endoscopy, it is likely to be therapeutic.
Okay.
That's what I
So-
said. If ultrasound,
Yeah.
even the ultrasound
Well, you
didn't
are
show
right.
anything.
Yeah, since madam raised this issue, I told her.
Yeah, okay.
Now, but unfortunately, this patient goes for an endoscopy first, and that's the endoscopic appearance. Second part of the duodenum. Ubal, your comments, please.
So this is a forward wing. It's very difficult to say with the forward wing because you are seeing two kind of bulges.
Okay.
So the down one, I think it is a major ampulla, and the proximal one, I am not very sure it is a minor or something. True swelling you are seeing.
Okay.
So both looks very prominent. The mucosa grossi looks normal. So
Okay.
most likely it is from the extrinsic compression. So when I see this kind of lesion, I usually do a sideways.
So when you do when you see this lesion, you'll do a side wingoscopy, and obviously there is the mucosa seems to be intact only.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So
still you want
sometimes
to.
what you'll see, if you are able to see the papilla, sometimes you can see some ulcerated lesion or anything.
Okay.
That will give an idea to take a biopsy or not. But in this
Okay.
case, I am very doubtful because this proximal bulge, I am not sure whether it is some other lesion or a minor
Okay.
ampulla. I am not sure.
So basically, according to you, the ampulla seems to be very bulging, and there is a proximal another lesion which is a submucosal lesion, probably.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
EUS be useful now, EUS, rather than an ERCP? EUS?
EUS, madam.
Yeah.
Ubal,
EUS again, I think it is not for because since we don't know what is exactly the diagnosis, EUS mainly in this case is going to be for a biopsy. So
Okay.
before that, I think better imaging will be because EUS will see the what is a bulge and what exactly whether any lesion, but
Okay.
still for the better staging other things, I think CT should have a priority. Both EUS and ERCP, I feel more of a therapeutic indication here,
Okay.
not for diagnosis because we are not looking at any submucosal or small leiomyoma, those kind of things. This is a case of obstructive jaundice where you need a proper further treatment. Further, I think a better imaging is required.
Okay.
So if the same thing, if the asymptomatic patient, this kind of lesion, you can go for a EUS to classify whether it is a mucosal or submucosal lesion. For this kind of clinical scenario, I think CT will be a better option.
Okay. Bhaskaran sir, what's your opinion with this endoscopy findings?
Same, I really can't make out. There is something in the submucosal region.
Okay. Okay.
Can't pinpoint.
Okay. So we have to go for a CT scan, pancreatic protocol. Yeah. So that's the, I don't have all the images. I just, I'll show you some representative images for you. That's the axial sections of at the level of the head of the pancreas. This is not a pancreatic protocol because they have given positive oral contrast. Ideally, you'll have to give a negative oral contrast, but somehow this is a CT scan done outside. You can see the second part of the duodenum with the contrast there, and you can see the head of the pancreas. It's showing some solid and cystic components there. That's the superior mystic vein and the artery. And in this cut, you can see once again cystic lesions, and it's a cut at the lower level, unsned process. You can see some few tiny cysts there. And the duodenum also, you can see something in the duodenum, which was corresponding to the submucosal or the bulge. What was corresponding, the bulge corresponding to the endoscopy finding is represented here in the CT scan also. I'll show you some more reconstructed images for you. That's you can see the main pancreatic duct is grossly dilated. And once again, you see the solid and cystic lesions in the head of the pancreas and unsned process. And you also see some lesion in the second part of the duodenum, suggests corresponding to the submucosal lesion. Few more reconstructed images. And this is an image showing the exact bulge that we saw in the endoscopy, and the pancreatic duct is also dilated till that end. So those are all the images for you, CT scan. I'm sorry that if I have a PACS, then I can run the entire gamut of images, but
Shankar, CPT and proximal IHBR.
yeah, that was dilated, madam. CPT was dilated, IHBR was dilated.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, gallbladder was normal. It was not distended. Bhaskaran, sir?
Yeah, I think this is some kind of a cystic neoplasm or rarely hydatid cyst, which has migrated through the duct.
Okay.
Looks like IPMN.
IPMN, sir. Okay. Kannan, sir. Okay. So, one possibility is an IPMN. Ubal?
Such a grossly dilated duct, there are two possibilities. One is IPMN, and
Okay.
second is a chronic pancreatitis, but very unlikely this kind of, because you are not able to see any lesion. That I don't think any stones are there. There is no strictures.
Okay.
So the appearance of the grossly dilated bulge, everything looks more in favor of IPMN. Maybe in the oscillate process, maybe a side branch IPMN, but very unlikely you have a main as well as side branch IPMN. So
No, it can be a mixed type. You can have a, we classify them into main duct type, branch type, and mixed type. So, yeah.
Mostly, I think probably an IPMN.
So what you see as the submucosal is nothing but the mucus producing that bulge. Am I correct, Ubal?
Yeah, that's what the CT scan showed. Dilated.
But usually you have even mucus extruding out through the ampulla, no?
Yeah, that we can see the side wing only.
In the side
That's
wings.
what I said. That's what I said. Whenever you see the bulge, you always put a side wing scope and see.
Okay.
That can demonstrate a mucosa or something.
Okay. Okay.
Because that ampulla, you are not able to see the opening. So the mucus usually comes through the opening. So.
Okay. So the differential diagnosis at this point is probably an IPMN, maybe a mixed type, because it is, you see a dilated main pancreatic duct, and you can see multiple cystic lesions in the head of the pancreas, as well as septated cystic lesions in the uncinate process. So IPMN is a high possibility, but usually IPMN occurs in a age group is beyond 60, older age group.
Little older age group.
Yeah, in the age of 65 to 70 years. This patient was only 47 years. Bhaskaran, sir, you told you think in terms of some cystic neoplasm. You are thinking
Mucinous. Possibly mucinous. I mean, CA99 is against it. Otherwise, very, very rarely a possibility of a primary hydatid of the pancreatic head.
Primary hydatid, okay.
Yeah, because it can also cause pressure changes and something can extrude through the duct to give this bulge.
Okay. Okay. So what next for the patient, sir? We had a CT scan. We had an endoscopy, ultrasound. CA99 is grossly elevated, 921. What will be the next investigation of choice?
Side being endoscopy.
Side being scopy, sir. Okay. Actually, that was done, and they were not able to find out any growth. The same bulge was seen in a better way. There was no extrusion of mucus. Bulge was seen. The ampullary bulge was seen, and there was a juxta-ampullary, another bulge was also seen.
No stenting.
No stenting done, sir.
Because bilirubin is 19.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can we consider EUS and sampling to see whether it is mucinous?
You want to do a EUS and sampling, sir. Okay. Yeah. Ubal?
And some probably plan surgery or accordingly.
Ubal, what do you want to do at this point of time? EUS and sampling?
It depends upon the surgeon. So some of the surgeons if they want to straight away go for surgery, they can go, because all the indication for surgery is there, whether it is the IPMN or anything. The surgery is the next treatment.
Okay.
So the surgically candidate, they can go for, because some of them, they will be concerned about the bilirubin. If that is the case, I think we can go for a EUS plus CRCP for a tissue sampling and do that. But if the surgeon is willing for operation, I think histology is not mandatory for it.
Okay. So basically, there are multiple options. Number one, if surgeon is comfortable in going ahead with this bilirubin, because patient is fine only, albumin is normal and INR was normal. there is no evidence of cholangitis. So with a bilirubin of 19 milligrams, if a surgeon is comfortable to go for surgery, he can go. Only thing is he has to rule out a metastatic disease because CA99 was grossly elevated, 921. Another option is to go for a ERCP stenting followed by surgery at after 2 or 3 weeks. Now, Upal, you have to mention about the role of EUS at this point of time.
That's what I said. EUS for a diagnostic purpose at this point.
Okay.
So mainly to see because any cystic lesion, the ideal mode of diagnosis will be EUS because you can take sampling and do tumor markers and properly you can diagnose.
Okay.
So that will give an idea for what exact pathology. So if you want to establish a diagnosis, I think the next investigational choice will be endoscopic.
Okay. Now, the first diagnosis that most of us entertain here is an IPMN. And only thing is the age is against it. But still, if it is going to be an IPMN and with a bilirubin of 20, it has to be a malignant IPMN. It cannot be a benign one. All of you are agreeing with that?
Yes.
Okay. So, what is the role of PET-CT in such situations? Because CA99 is grossly elevated. Should we do a PET-CT before going for surgery or further evaluation as a metastatic workup?
There is a role.
Whether PET-CT is very useful in pancreatic cystic neoplasms.
Okay. Kannan sir, you are suggesting...
Yeah, I think we can go for PET.
Okay, sir. Okay. Dr. Ravichandran sir, if you're there, you can pitch in with your comments also. So, is there a role of MRCP in such situations?
This CT has given a very good image.
Okay, sir.
What we expect in MRCP that CT has given. I don't
Same
think
findings only. Okay. Okay. Anyhow, this patient also had an MRCP for some reason. You can see the MRCP pictures there. You can see the grossly dilated IHBR and the common hepatic duct and part of the bile duct was dilated. Gallbladder is not distended, you can see. Distal CBD seems to be of low caliber. I don't know how to explain that. And you see the main duct is dilated, pancreatic duct, and you see a tuft of dilated ducts in the region of the head of the pancreas. This is one image which I would like to keep as a vintage photograph of this particular entity.
But this kind of image usually we see in chronic pancreatitis. This kind of CBD, the narrowing of the lower end.
Okay.
And you can see in two differential diagnosis, not this dilated amount of duct. One is autoimmune pancreatitis, where you see the long stricture in the lower CBD, where the pancreatic duct will be normal. If you see a dilated duct with a kind of strictures, there's a chronic pancreatitis. But this hugely dilated ducts in the uncinate and the side branches, that is very unusual.
Yeah.
So that only makes this is not neither a chronic pancreatitis nor a classical CA pancreas, though it should be something more than that.
Okay. Kannan sir, with this MRCP, any?
No, I will rule out chronic pancreatitis because the duct is uniformly dilated. There is no stricture, lakes appearance, no calcification.
Okay.
So chronic pancreatitis is ruled out. The only thing I can think of is only IPMN.
IPMN, okay. Bhaskaran sir?
Same. IPMN or mucinous cystic neoplasm.
So
IPMN also, I don't know why the lower CBD is like that, because we are not seeing any compression there, because whatever the compression, it is in the uncinate and the lower down.
That's good.
So whether there is anything missing in that area, we are not sure.
It was seen on ultrasound also.
Basically, that imaging, the distal CBD appearance seems to be unexplainable. Why that appearance? Because the obstruction seems to be lower down. Why? And this bile duct caliber seems to be little atypical. It is not fitting with the stricture because the lumen is patent, and it seems to be a very atypical appearance of the distal CBD. Now, so what next for the patient, sir? What are the options?
Shankar, can there be nodes there around the cystic duct causing upstream dilatation and the CBD is actually normal? Is it possible? You're coming from the distal CBD.
Usually nodal obstruction will not produce this kind of appearance, madam. Because see, there is definitely evidence of obstructive jaundice. The IH bar is dilated, CBD, everything is dilated. The only thing is a part of the CBD seems to be of low caliber.
Only for that reason I'm asking, is it possible there are nodes at the cystic duct CHD junction causing upstream dilatation and not causing much dilatation of this portion?
Actually, if there are nodes that will be picked up on a CT, in this CT was, they have not picked up any lymph nodes. Yeah. So what options, Ubal has already told the option is left to the surgeon. Bhaskar sir, what will you do? You will go for ERCP and stenting or go for surgery?
Possibility of getting a UAS and sampling, I mean, it will just make us feel a little more comfortable.
No, any of this patient is
eventually needed, and unless you get at something very unusual, like some islet cell tumor or some such thing.
Even then, surgery is indicated.
Yeah, in a way, obstructed patient.
Because Kannan sir was very clear that it is not suggestive of chronic pancreatitis, only IPMN. Only thing is, patient needs surgery. Whether you are going to do a ERCP and preoperative biliary drainage and then go for surgery or directly go for surgery is a question.
Actually, you can go for surgery direct.
Okay. Kannan sir, you want to go for a preoperative biliary drainage, sir?
Yeah, of late, my policy is bilirubin more than 15. I would like to drain the biliary system.
Okay, sir.
And then go for surgery.
Okay. So this particular patient, hello. Some extraneous noise. Okay. We gave the options to the patient, and patient was fit enough because good performance status and there is no cholangitis. So and endoscopist was not also keen on doing a stenting. They left the option to us. So we proceeded with surgery. Before I show you the further images, this is a quiz question for the students who are listening. What is the component of the Ohashi's triad? Ohashi was the first person, a Japanese person who described this entity of IPMN. So what is the classical triad of this one? And we went ahead and did a Whipple's operation, and there is no vascular invasion, and that's a specimen for you. You can see this is the head of the pancreas and unsnate. It is full of, the surface is bossulated with tiny cysts, multiple cysts. And this is a very beautiful photograph given by the pathologist by sectioning this. You can see the duodenum has been opened, and you can see the pancreas with multiple small cystic lesions there. A better image will be this particular one. You can see because of the jaundice, things are stained there, and multiple cystic lesions in the head of the pancreas, and few more images given by the pathologist. And the histology finally confirmed that it was a malignant IPMN. I can't read these pictures, but I got it from the pathologist. If there are any pathology person in the audience, they can read it. So the final histopathology came as malignant IPMN. Now, before I just go through the theoretical aspects, which comprise of few slides, I just want opinion of the panelist. What is their experience of IPMN and especially malignant IPMN? Because if you see, when we attend conferences, in medical gastroenterology conference, one common comment made is, we don't see more cases of Barrett's esophagus in India. Similarly, in surgical conferences, we hear information that we don't see more cases of IPMN in our part. So I just want to take the opinion of the experts here. What is their experience of dealing with IPMN and more specifically malignant IPMN?
I don't have much experience. Okay. I see you were there.
My first experience, I did, I think in the year 2009 or 10, and I was working in Rayapeta Hospital.
Yes, sir.
I operated on a retired matron. She came with a mass in the body and tail of pancreas.
Okay, sir.
So I did a distal pancreatectomy. I thought it was adenocarcinoma. Only thing, it was very bulky
Okay, sir.
with no metastasis. So I thought it was a malignancy, and then I did the surgery. That is the time I came to know that there is an entity called IPM, malignant IPM.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's a recent entity only, sir. Okay.
Yeah, after that I operated few cases. In fact, one lady was shunted everywhere as chronic pancreatitis. You know, this image of the duct
Yes, sir.
like a chronic pancreatitis. So she was treated like chronic pancreatitis everywhere, but luckily it turned out to be a benign one.
Okay, okay. Actually, what you're telling is correct, sir, because most of the times this IPMN are wrongly diagnosed as a chronic pancreatitis. So it's, and sometimes a chronic pancreatitis and IPMN can coexist. That's also there. But this particular patient was not having any calcification, as you correctly told. And another point is, Dr. Ravichandran, sir, are you there?
Actually, I'm also there because few patients, even I myself treated as a chronic pancreatitis, later turned to be the IPMN. Not necessarily, because initially probably we missed the IPMN. I remember one elderly 80-year-old male, I'm treating quite sometimes for a repeated ERCP and stenting for a pancreatic pain.
Okay.
Subsequently, he underwent surgery and doing well. So these are one of the conditions where the prognosis is very good. So I think the diagnosis should be made ideally pre-op. But sometimes this is very different, this picture. But sometimes what will happen is you see only a dilated duct. So that time you'll be very confused whether it is a IPMN or a chronic pancreatitis.
Yeah.
So
actually, before this terminology IPMN was coined, it was called as a mucinous ductectasia of the pancreas. So pancreatic duct is dilated, but we do not know the reason for that. But now we know that all the mucinous ductectasia are now nothing but IPMNs, and definitely IPMN can be wrongly diagnosed as chronic pancreatitis. And if you can pick up at the appropriate stage and offer treatment, they carry good prognosis. But once
other thing is, Shankar, I want to know what is the difference between malignant and benign? Because I remember even the side branch IPMN, the main treatment will be surgery.
Yeah.
So whether it is benign or malignant, I think surgery is the treatment of choice for IPMN.
Yeah, correct. That I will discuss in the.
Because I remember one 30 or 40-year-old male who is working in a Gulf came to me with a vague picture, and we made a diagnosis of side branch IPMN. He went and went surgery. So that.
No, the problem in IPMN is what happens is now we are doing more and more CT scan for symptoms. We pick up a lot of incidental pancreatic cysts, which are small, say, which are 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters, and all. So they're all they are just side branch IPMN, which may not need surgery. They just need surveillance. So that's what there is a famous acronym now floating across the pancreatic community, what is called as VOMIT, which stands for Victims of Medical Imaging Technology. Whenever you do more imaging, you pick up some incidental findings. Say it's like a neuroendocrine tumor of 1 centimeter or a branch stuck IPMN of 2 centimeters. So what to do with these patients is a big question. So there are different ways in which IPMN can manifest. One as an incidental finding on an imaging. And if the patient is symptomatic, then you have to offer treatment. The main symptom of these patients will be pain abdomen. And they can also present like an acute pancreatitis. They can also present like a chronic pancreatitis. They can present with jaundice, weight loss. So different clinical manifestations are there. Whenever you have a symptomatic patient, then you have to offer surgery. Asymptomatic, incidentally picked up lesions can be followed up. Now, when it comes,
there's a size limit, Shankar sir.
Yeah, Ilango.
Sorry, I was late. I couldn't get the link in the right place. I was searching for the link in the Navigator.
Okay.
So, for incidentally picked up lesions, I think 3 centimeters is the cutoff point. That's the guy.
Yeah.
Main duct disease, that is main duct more than 10 millimeters in size is still an indication for surgery. And this is only, used to be the only time when I constantly do PET. Now I do PET for every pancreatic malignancy, so it doesn't matter anymore. Dilated pancreatic duct with the suspected IPM and main duct IPM, and I used to do PET exclusively for them to pick up malignant changes. But nowadays, most of the patients who are presenting that are like, you can decide that it's malignant and go ahead with surgery.
Yeah, yeah.
How big was the pancreatic duct at the anastomosis, sir? And what did you do with the?
No, in this patient, we did a Whipple's operation and pancreatic duct was grossly dilated. So pancreatic anastomosis was easy, but we didn't do a pancreatoscopy or anything to find out any additional lesion in the distal pancreas because we sent it for frozen section and it was negative. Because what you have to do in IPMN is if it is a head disease, you have to do a Whipple's and the margin, pancreatic neck margin should be given for frozen section. It has to be negative. If it is positive, then you have to re-resect some more. That is called creeping resections. So you have to keep on resecting until you get a negative margin. But still, even after getting a negative margin, sometimes you can miss another lesion in the distal pancreatic duct. So if facilities are available, you can do an intraoperative pancreatoscopy and make sure that, of course, the best treatment for IPMN is total pancreatectomy, which is, we know it's a very morbid procedure. Anyway, we'll talk about that. Few words about cystic lesions of the pancreas. Nearly more than 60% are mucinous neoplasm, and the most common being the MCM. IPMN, both main duct and branch duct constitutes nearly 40%. Coming to IPMN, it accounts for 1% of all pancreatic tumors. It's more common in males. The peak incidence, Ubal was telling, it was in the age of 60 to 70 years. Mostly it is solitary, but it can be multifocal, especially the branch duct IPMN can be multifocal. You can have a branch duct IPMN in the head and in the rest of the pancreas also. The classical type of main duct IPMN will be involving the head of the pancreas mostly. Similarly, the branch duct IPMN classically involves the unsnate process. That's a common sites, but other areas can also get affected. Now, these are all the three types, and of course, main duct, branch duct, and mixed type. And we are all talking about the indications of surgery and surveillance that is given by the Fukuoka's guidelines. I don't know, anyone of you have visited Fukuoka in Japan? Initially, the first guidelines came in once again from the Japanese consensus conference only. It was called Sendai's guidelines in the year 2006. Which was revised in the year 2012 after a consensus meeting which happened in Fukuoka's, it is called Fukuoka's guidelines, and it classifies lesions into basically two types or three types. You have high risk stigmata and those which has worrisome features, and those are low risk. So whenever you have a high risk stigmata, then you have to go for surgery. So number one is patient is presenting with obstructive jaundice. If you are able to see an enhancing mural nodule on a contrast CT or an endoscopic ultrasound, if you see a mural nodule, and if the main pancreatic, Ilanga was telling about the main pancreatic duct, if the main pancreatic duct is more than 10 millimeters, all these things come under the category of high risk stigmata, which means invariably these patients will have malignancy. Either, so you have to go for surgery. And there is something called worrisome features, which includes for branch duct IPMN, if it is more than 3 centimeters, if you have an enhancing nodule less than 5 millimeters, sometimes you can have a thick wall that is thick-walled and enhancing wall. And when main pancreatic is 5 to 9 millimeters, and if we are able to demonstrate some rapid rise in the cyst size within 2 years, then also it comes under worrisome features, which means that you'll have to go for an aggressive surveillance in the form of doing an endoscopic ultrasound and do sampling. And once again, the threshold to offer surgery should be very low. If the patient is a surgical candidate, you have to offer surgery. Because though it may not have malignancy at this point of time, it has a high malignant potential. In fact, the malignant potential of main duct IPMN is nearly 50 to 90%. Whereas a branch duct IPMN is usually doesn't turn malignancy, but not that it is impossible to turn malignancy. Malignancy has been reported in even branch duct IPMN also. So indications of surgery, I already told you, and that's how we classify them. If there is a high risk stigmata, go for surgery. If there are worrisome features, go for endoscopic ultrasound and try to find out, get a sampling. And you have to have a very low threshold for offer surgery in a fit patient. If you don't have any of these like high risk stigmata or worrisome features, then you can put the patient on surveillance, which means that you have to do repeated imaging. Whether to do a CT scan or MRI is always a controversy. So that's a protocol for based on the Fukuoka's guidelines of IPMN. Coming to the surgery for IPMN, if it's a head disease, you have to go for a pancreatidoneectomy. If it is left-sided, then you have to go for a distal pancreatectomy. Sometimes if you have a multifocal disease, you have to go for a total pancreatectomy. Lymph node dissection has to be done. And if you think that the lesion could be of non-malignant potential, then you can go for excision, enucleation, and uncinectomy have been recommended. But you always have to confirm with frozen section. So, Uval, you can talk about endoscopic ultrasound. Sometimes a small lesion they are trying to ablate. Uval?
I'm not sure whether here anybody is doing it. So
Okay.
that usually been done by Korean and Japanese. In the small lesions, they can do an ablation and they can follow up regularly.
Okay.
Here, I think most of them will go for surgery.
Okay. So if you have a small lesion, less than 2 centimeters or less than 3 centimeters, now people are trying to do ablation of the cyst with injecting alcohol or some chemotherapeutic agent. That's one of the recent advances. And that completes the presentation. And I want to take the final comments from the panelists.
Yeah, very, very nice case.
Okay, sir. Any chat box will find out any.
So what is the CBD? Why, Shankar, that is narrowed? Anything in the perioperative you see?
Perioperatively, we couldn't see anything. Well, I do not know. Sometimes there are case reports, 1 or 2 case reports where now there is something called IPMN involving the bile duct. There is an entity called IPMN. Exactly how you get it in pancreas, you can have a intraductal papillary mucinous neoplasm of the bile duct is also a new entity. It has been reported in the year 2010. But there are 2 case reports where there is a same patient had both IPMN of the pancreas as well as IPMN involving the bile duct. So actually, I didn't specifically ask the pathologist to look into the distal bile duct whether it was also having any papillary mucinous neoplasm, because that's one possibility.
How is the gallbladder remaining normal?
Yeah, that gallbladder is, I mean, sometimes it could have been some repeated mild cholecystitis would have happened, and that could have.
Yeah, in the absence of a stone, it's very difficult to prove that.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Somebody has suggested whether it could be group pancreatitis.
Okay.
Group pancreatitis is seen usually in the alcoholics, and it is involving the groove of the pancreas, small cystic lesions. It's purely MRI confirmatory.
Yeah.
And most of the time we can manage medically also. I have done surgery also for group pancreatitis people.
Okay.
But this kind of cystic lesions, dilated pancreas duct, and so much elevated bilirubin you won't see in group pancreatitis.
Yes, sir.
Pancreatitis, the bilirubin will be around somewhere around within 10 only.
Okay. Now, in group pancreatitis, probably why he has asked this, in group pancreatitis, if you do an endoscopic ultrasound, you can pick up a small tiny cyst in the duodenal wall itself.
Yeah, that you can pick up in MRI. MRI is beautiful,
Yeah.
that is diagnostic of group pancreatitis.
Yeah. So, but it will not be within the pancreatic parenchyma. It will be within the wall of the duodenum. So that's a very classical of group pancreatitis.
I think that's the reason I think somebody asked.
Yeah.
Because usually it is in the wall of the duodenum that is very classical of the group.
Okay. If there are no questions, shall we close, sir?
Yeah, thank you.
Good case. Good case.
Okay, sir. Thank you, Kannan.
Tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.